Welcome to the Making Schools Work podcast, a podcast for everyone in education. This show is brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. At SREB, we believe that every school has the potential to be great. Whatever you do in the school, whatever your job may be, let's talk about things that make schools work.
Welcome back to the Making Schools Work podcast. I'm Daniel Rock, a senior instructional coach at SREB, and I'm here with Erin Anderson-William, a leadership coach at SREB. How are you, Erin?
Dan, man, it has been a fabulous season talking to all of the speakers that we're going to have for our conference this year.
This is our wrap-up episode where we look at some of the ideas and themes that have run through these different conversations. You and I are going to think about the tensions, possibilities, different ways of looking at these. We're going to talk about how schools are using data, how they talk about student engagement. We're going to talk about starting with a student's why and building interest and investment, using real world careers, what that looks like and how that impacts instruction. And then we're going to finish with AI. And we're going to answer the question, Erin, does AI rot your brain? We're going to see if we can come to a conclusion on that one. I saw that on a sign the other day, someone protesting. So we can explore that for a few minutes. So we had, Erin, a guest this semester. All of our guests were people who are either showcase schools or pacesetter schools, or they're people who are going to be featured presenters. One of our guests was Dr. Bethany Wilson. She's the principal at Gladeville Middle School in Tennessee. And she talked about students being partners in their data, having data talks with students, having students monitor their own growth through assessments throughout the year. And then earlier we had a conversation with Natasha Brown. She's a principal at Westover Middle School in Cumberland, North Carolina. She talked about quarterly data meetings with students, and she wanted to build pride and ownership of them owning their data. I've been in schools, Erin, where it's not quite so wonderful. I've been in schools where the principal has teachers stand up and every teacher has to explain to the administration their mid-semester assessment data and where the students started, where they are now, and what they're doing about it. It created a lot of anxiety. So I'm curious, how do you see leaders using data in a way that builds confidence and focus on achievable goals, but not letting it turn into a place of blame, shame, and anxiety? I'm curious about what you see and what experiences you have and how you talk to leaders about that.
Yeah, where I see data conversations, whether it's teachers talking about data to the administration or students talking about their data with their teachers, this is where it's most successful, is where the principal has created a culture that the data is not punitive. And we know that in our education system, we are graded, right? Federal systems for grading the effectiveness of schools, state grading report cards for whether a school is a good school or a bad school, according to certain criteria. And when people look publicly, we look at that data, and even historically in our education system, an A is very positive and an F means failure, right? So we're ingrained in the structure of our educational system to be good or bad. So an effective leader really just has to massage the idea of data not being an enemy, but an informant. And then making it safe for people to not have such great data, but to use it as a tool for improvement, reflection, to readjust, and continues that growth process. And I think both of those leaders that we talked to, Bethany and Natasha, they talked about that from their leadership perspective. But there are also principals that are like, no, we have to make this data and it has to be positive or we're going to be in trouble. And if that leader absorbs data in that way, it permeates through the school and it's not a good situation.
I remember a teacher at a school with a high L population. And at the beginning of the school year, the principal gave out certificates to the teachers who had, I don't know if they were the highest test scores or the highest growth scores, but on their end of course test. And the teacher said, well, I'll never get one of those. I mean, my students will never score at the level that those students. And I remember that feeling of hopelessness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, never going to have that because she chose to teach those students. So I'm thinking about how do we, in a world where the data will skew higher for students who often are in the higher socioeconomic stratosphere, students who are in those gifted classes, we still group kids. When you look at a teacher's data, a teacher who's choosing to work with the most challenging students is going to have a difficult lift. How do we celebrate her or him and make him want to show how his kids are doing, even when we know by comparison, they're not going to look as good? It's a culture question.
It is absolutely a culture question. And I think the data gives us a lot of opportunities. It's up to us as leaders to choose a variety of data to acknowledge.
Yeah,
If I think about data sources, right? We have achievement data and we have growth data. Oftentimes that's tied to academic. But even what about growth from starting from zero and moving just a little bit? Can we acknowledge that? Because to get to massive growth, we have to do incremental growth. What about the student that never came to school and then started coming to school? We have growth in attendance, right? So we can acknowledge attendance. What about those teachers that are just really great at building relationship with the hardest to relate to students? Can we acknowledge them? That's also data. So leaders, as teachers, as leaders, as people in schools that are trying to push a positive culture for learning and growth, we have to be the leaders in acknowledging different ways that it takes to improve a school. And it's not always just the academic achievement that gets put in the public because it's tied to a measurement system for the government. It's really the human actions and culture within the school and looking for ways to acknowledge the hard work that people are putting in to move the needle every day.
And that's having a fluency in assessment. And what is the purpose of assessment?
Absolutely.
The purpose of your assessment is to tell you what you need to do in a different way so that more students understand. And if that's their perspective and that's the conversation, and you're very careful about your language, I feel like most teachers will understand and feel being supported.
I agree. And I think your actions have to follow those words. I've seen horrible situations where a principal will start out the year here for growth. We're here for everybody to learn. And then those mid-year scores come and they're like, we have to get these scores up. We have to do better. This is unacceptable. Well, you can't start out saying that it's safe here to grow and improve and then punish people when it gets scary, when it gets tight, because learning is not a linear process, but we assess it in a linear way. Different people grow and learn at different trajectories and at different times. And we just have to be willing to stay the course, but also keep the message in the positive and use it to adjust where we need to keep moving in the direction we'd like to go.
We're going to hold ourselves accountable, but we're not going to shame. We're not going to blame and shame, but we are going to say, not our fault, but it is our problem.
It's good.
So let's think about a term that comes up in any school you go to, and on many of our observations and school visits, is engagement. What are we trying to work at as a school? We're trying to help increase engagement. And that's a term that's used so much that it's hard to define it. Different people have different ideas of what it looks like. Some people think it's students talking to each other. Some students, movement around the classroom is big. Some people, it's students completing their work. And Dr. Johnson, Tony Johnson, who is the founder of Captivate Perspectives, we had him on and he talked about helping people move from compliant engagement to authentic engagement, about how coaches and leaders can talk about engagement in a way that isn't so gray, that isn't just sort of like, to me, it's like back when principals used to say to us, kids are doing this, they're doing that. I'll be, well, just be creative, right? They used to say, be creative, get them to, and I'm like, what are you even talking about? I don't even know what that means. Be creative. It's an easy solution to a very complicated problem. And sometimes I think increasing engagement feels like an easy solution. And he talked to what he was doing is saying, we can't just think about them being on task. Being on task is a big deal, but what is it that they're actually doing that matters? I'm curious, what are you talking about when people say to you, we have to increase engagement in our school? What does that mean to you as a coach?
It's always funny. I smile because engagement in our schools, 9 times out of 10, when people are talking engagement, they are talking behavioral, right? We want them complying with whatever the teacher is asking them to do. They're engaged because they're sitting with their group and they're working on the project together. But we really want our students actively engaged in thinking and learning. And so engagement is so much deeper than being able to walk into a classroom and say, yep, everybody's sitting in their seats and they're looking at the teacher at the board. They're engaged.
Or they're walking around doing 4 corners.
They're engaged.
Ask them to be working on, we're playing 4 corners. Okay. What questions is he asking you? He's just asking us some questions. Well, what are they? I don't know.
And so there's and I want to say it's a complicated nuance, but it's kind of, we're in school for learning. And so the art and science of teaching is that the teacher has posed an opportunity to learn something, hopefully the standards, hopefully the content area that they're teaching, but created these activities and dialogue opportunities to stretch the thinking of students. So student engagement really should look like they're participating, right? But participating in the thinking opportunity for learning, which includes students having conversation around the content, students participating in an activity that builds their learning and knowledge, students talking to the teacher and listening to the teacher and to each other around that content. When Dr. Johnson was talking about going from compliance to authentic engagement, you can tell a student to put your name on your paper, answer these 4 questions, and turn your paper in the basket. That is compliance. But engagement is, today we're going to talk about, what's your favorite topic, Dan?
Theater.
We're going to learn about theater from the 1800s and compare it to a movie release in 2025. The students are going to get actively involved in comparing those 2 time periods and this genre to get a better knowledge and understanding of theater.
I like the way you say theater.
Theater, yes.
Theater.
This should be a very exciting opportunity. It should be theatrical. That would evidence of student engagement, kids talking and exploring and laughing and asking questions. That is authentic engagement.
The word that I would recommend us try to use is investment. How can we get kids invested? A lesson that I was doing a few weeks ago with a social studies teacher, she had to teach about local government and participation in local government. Somehow we got it to passing laws about social media usage in teens and student access to social media and what laws, who should be responsible for this? Should it be companies that create the apps? Should it be the government? Should it just be the parents? Who should have control and who should be held accountable when things go wrong? Finding something that the kids are invested in that matters to them can change their attitude. Are they doing something where they actually have curiosity about the answer? Are they doing something where what they produce matters to them and not just because it is important somehow. They see that it's a worthwhile topic or subject. And I think that's part of the teacher's job is to show why it matters, right? It's not just, oh, they don't care about this. Well, maybe you can now make them care, right? That's something that the greatest teachers in the world are the ones who can get kids excited about learning things that most people aren't that interested in.
Absolutely. Depending on what you're interested in, every class you take in school may not be something that you personally are interested in, right?
Very true.
But the way the teacher presents information or the activities that they create can spark interest.
Yeah.
And I feel like when teachers, you mentioned the principal's like, just get creative.
Yeah.
But if I'm not creative, I don't know what to do with it. Maybe find someone that can give you a different angle to approach a topic that's relevant for students that would hook them into wanting to invest their time, their attention, their effort, right?
Yeah.
I think that's right in that same place with student motivation, where they're not motivated to do anything. They are motivated, but they might be under-motivated in the way that the information is being presented to help them want to invest in it.
In an episode that we did last year or maybe earlier this year, we talked about opening and closing lessons. And to me, a big part of engagement is asking the question, how do I build curiosity into what we're learning today? And that might be at the beginning of the unit, at the beginning of the lesson, at the end of the lesson. But that's a question as a teacher is really important to be asking myself and reflecting on. Because if a student isn't genuinely curious about the topic, it's going to be very challenging to get them to invest in learning what you're asking them to learn.
I remember working with a teacher one year. She was a science teacher in a middle school, 6th grade. And she had started using hook books to introduce science units, which I thought was a fabulous way to integrate literacy into the science class. But she went to the library and pulled books that were related to whatever that science unit standards were about. And she read or let other students read this little books, like children's books, and then ask kids questions about the book, what they heard about, what they thought about the book or the topic. And then she went into the lesson of what they were going to learn for the unit. And I saw a change in engagement.
Yeah.
Kids were interested because they were curious about the book, and the way she sparked their brain to warm up their thinking before trying to teach them something, it was phenomenal.
That's a great strategy. Let's take this in another direction. Deb Cullen gave a great episode where she talked about infusing academics into CTE and maybe CTE into academics. It goes both ways. Dr. Benelli, the assistant principal at Hume Bog, who you know from back in the day, you knew Dr. Benelli.
Yes.
They had students building, she had her students at her school creating different clubs, different organizations, using skills to create a media club where they were filming the different sports events and CTE rich activities in a school that was an academic focused school. They took that time to build career readiness outside of the classroom, which was extraordinarily powerful because it gave students a real motivation to go to school. And Deb talked about academic infusion into CTE and bringing CTE into academics. But I have a wondering, and sometimes I'm split on this, which is this idea of real world application and connecting what you're learning to careers is so important so that the kids see the purpose. I wonder, is it too much to ask teachers to go beyond learning something? Is it okay to tell a student, you need to learn this because you need to learn it? You need to learn it because it's in the standards. And the standards say you need to understand the Pythagorean theorem. The thing I go back to is poetry. Why do students have to read poetry or Shakespeare? That's not something that's going to really impact their lives. But we believe as a society that it's important for kids to understand what poetry is because it's part of our Western tradition to know certain great poets and great poems. Do you ever wonder the current push for career readiness and career focused learning might make things like the humanities and learning concepts for their own sake? Is that a bad idea? Am I crazy to think we're going maybe too far? And I'm not saying I believe that, but that's something that I worry about sometimes.
Thinking about the history of our Western education system, the reason we learn and go to school changes with the times. And so does what we learn. During the Industrial Revolution, career counselors, also known as guidance counselors, their job was to help guide kids either into college or to work. You had two tracks. You had the academic or you had the vocational, right? You're going to go to work or you're going to go to college and be a scholar and learn about philosophy and humanities and culture, right? And then we end up today in this global society where we are connected by technology to the Eastern world, the Western, the world of the arts and the world of science, local and international global. In order for us to continue developing and advancing as a society, the integration of all of it makes us more connected to the world that we live in. And it also makes us more marketable in our work and careers that we choose after we graduate from secondary school.
I want to add something here, which is that I think something you said I disagree with and something you said I do agree with. Not you, Erin, it's Dan specifically. I agree with everything you say all the time, Erin.
No way. Please don't.
We've always wanted people to learn this. These are Western traditions. Is that why we should keep teaching it? Should we do it because we've always done it? The answer is no. But why have we always done it? And what's the purpose of art and poetry? I think there's not as big a disconnect because I think art and it teaches empathy, it teaches critical thinking, it teaches analysis, it teaches beauty, it teaches understanding other perspectives. And all those are also work-related skills. So I think there's a lot of value in teaching those for other reasons other than just it's Western tradition.
What's the purpose of going to school today? Is the purpose of going to school to prepare students to be good workers and employees and employers? Or is it to create a fully educated and knowledgeable population? The answer is both, right? But sometimes it feels as if it's only one of those. Sometimes I wonder if teachers feel that way.
I think teachers do feel that way. And I think the purpose of our education system has not changed over time. But I think the way that we educate has changed over time and will continue to change. And the reason it feels still very siloed is because as a system, we are not changing with the times in the way that we teach. Deb and Dr. Benelli brought to us the topic of integrating. Deb was talking about integrating traditional academics, English, math, science, and social studies with career and technical education, welding, automotives, graphic design, because there's English, math, science, and social studies in those technical career fields. If you're going to be in the automotive industry, you're going to have to know technology in a way that's different than you ever had because of AI and automation in the field. You're going to have a certain level of technical literacy to be able to lead in the field, fix things in the field, whatever range you are in your career, to know the math, the science, the history to keep up with the times. But if we are still only teaching humanities to the college goer, those students are still going to graduate college and have to enter the field where they're going to need to know some things that maybe they could have learned in the career and technical path. What Dr. Benelli was talking about was creating these clubs of interest, tying back to motivation and what makes kids curious and engagement, and allowing them to explore their interests in something that could become a career field for them while they're also getting grounded in advanced academics, which makes them more marketable and their own lives because of the types of jobs they'll be able to get after they graduate because of those experiences. The schools that are still focused on separating, oh, you're either a CTE student or you're a college student, are doing a disservice to the students. We find ourselves now in a time where there are jobs that are available and open, and we don't have people to fill them. And it's in the advanced areas and it's in the career technical areas. We need all the workers. So we have to teach them in a way that prepares everybody to do all things.
You said two things I just want to look at before we go to our last topic, which is we're teaching them the thinking. You said earlier about engagement is how are they thinking in the classroom? And if a teacher really focuses on the type of thinking that they're asking kids to do whenever they're doing an assignment and make that thinking visible, transparent, metacognitive, then it's easy to connect that to how you would use that out in the world and how people use that and how different jobs use it.
Well, that's okay, David, because
that's okay. I'm okay with that.
I love one of my favorite words, metacognition, thinking about your thinking. And if at the bare bones of what we do in our schools is to help kids think and be able to think about their thinking, they can really do anything because that is a transferable skill, not just for graduating high school and either going into the world of work or college, but for life. Life presents itself with opportunities where you have to problem solve, whether you're 15, 25, 35, 55, 75, you still have problems to solve. And if you can't think through it and know how to adjust as the world is adjusting around you, you're going to really struggle. So at the core of what I think we're here to do with our education system is to help our kids learn how to think and actively engage and invest in their life and in society.
Our last topic today is based on our conversation with Dr. Nicole Cobb. She is a professor of practice in human and organizational development at Vanderbilt University. She's going to be one of our featured speakers at the conference. And we talked to her about AI literacy. She's a big advocate for AI literacy and teaching students to use AI as a brainstorming tool, as an efficiency tool. Students are using AI to get feedback. Every state and district is creating guidance on AI, and there's pushback. In New York City, they were about to open up a school in which it was going to be an AI technology themed school. And they postponed opening the school because a lot of the community members were very concerned and feel like AI is not something they want as a predominant aspect of their kids' education. Always the backlash of things that are in the culture. Does AI rot your brain? What do you think about AI in the classroom? AI as a tool that kids are interacting with? I'm curious if you're seeing anything in the field, what you're hearing, what you're sensing around that, and if you have any feelings one way or the other. What's your vibe on AI in schools today?
Man, what a loaded question.
Yeah.
AI in its making, artificial intelligence, has the potential to be a great adversary of the human capacity building machine called our education system.
Adversary.
It has the potential to be a great adversary. Why? Because artificially, it can think for us. Artificially, it can do things for us that we don't have to do. And I think for those people that are the resistors and the ones that push back against AI, that's the fear, right? That it is going to rot our brain. We're going to become, Neanderthals that can't think and can't do anything because we're going to let this machine do all the work for us. And then what are we going to be as humans? I don't necessarily ascribe to that, but I do think it has its potential, depending on the way we teach people how to use it and how curious we get about learning what it can do, what it should do, and how it can support what we're trying to do as humans. For school, Dr. Cobb brought us some great things to really chew on, right? AI as a brainstorming tool, right? I have this thought, but I don't really know where I want to go with this. Let me ask an AI system, what are some other things just to give me ideas? Not to create everything for me, but to help my brain, to stimulate my brain to think beyond where it's thinking right now. I think that's good because we do participate in brainstorming activities in schools just to get the ideas out. And then collectively we decide, oh, that was a better idea. Let's go that way and try to explore that. Now, if I never have an idea to start with, I can never ask AI to enhance my ideas. So I think AI, it still is dependent on the human thought to get it to do any type of artificial thinking. When she talked about giving feedback, hey, AI machine, I've done this project. I've written this paper. I've done something, right? Again, as the human, I created something. Give me some feedback based on the artificial intelligence resources you have to make my work better. That's a great thing because if we do want to improve, artificial intelligence allows us to improve faster because the computer technology really cuts the time it would take for us to gather and have the think tank. But then there are also these risks that AI goes into spaces and places that are dangerous to us as a society. We don't know all the way what's real and what's fake now. It can generate images of people and recreate their voices and set up videos where we think it's truth and it's not. And then people are making decisions off of those things because they believed it, but it also was artificial. So
are you concerned that if we bring it into our classrooms, we're going to accelerate a dependence that undermines deep thinking amongst our young people?
Am I concerned? It all depends on how we train the adults to teach the students how to use it. When I think about AI, my brain always goes back to that good old tool in math called the calculator. The best teachers that I had were the teachers that taught my brain how to think before putting the calculator in my hand. But when they put the calculator in my hand, they told me that this calculator was going to cut time for me to be able to do the greater work that I needed to do from the calculation. So the stopping point for thinking didn't happen after I used the calculator to crunch numbers. It gave me the number faster than my brain could give it to me, but I had a deep understanding of why that number came up and what inputs I had to put into the tool to get an output that I could do something with. That particular teacher did not make me dependent on a calculator. That teacher helped me think first and then use the calculator to help me think greater for later. I think that's the approach we're going to have to take with AI in our schools. And I don't think we should not teach our students how to use it because their world is AI.
It will be, yeah.
It will continue to advance. And I believe we're selling our students short from life if we don't introduce them to the tools and teach them how to use them responsibly and to help them innovate with the tool and also know how to spot the dangers and pitfalls.
I feel as if we have to be smart about our assessments and design assessments. I'm not going to design an assessment that, it's AI proof, right? Because AI is going to be able to do any thinking that we can do for us. You can't spend your time trying to figure out how I'm going to design this question so that only a human can answer it, because I think that's futile. But if the standard says you have to be able to explain the process of mitosis and compare it to the process of meiosis, I'm going to have that assessment, pencil and paper or AI lists. But then the instruction, if it's going to help them learn the content and my test is reliable and valid, then it should be workable, right? Like I think the idea of the essay that they take home and type a 8-page essay about the theme of Great Gatsby is going to be very difficult to maintain because of what AI can do. But having them write 4 on-the-spot responses that they study for and that they talk to AI about to help them think about the themes of Great Gatsby, and then they come into class and are prepared to write that. So if your assessment is valid and true, you'll actually really know what they know and don't know, because you have to think about what they're going to produce, like homework and handouts that they take home and do. A lot of your students who are using AI, they were copying from Billy. They weren't learning it then either, because they were just copying from someone else's paper. If you have a good assessment, do they know the information or not? And if AI is going to help them learn it, then we should embrace it. And I think it has a real possibility to do that.
I agree. AI is going to challenge us as instructional leaders, instructional deliverers, to design learning experiences for students that get to the deeper depth of knowledge.
Right.
I'm ashamed to say that I have walked into a school and students were given a test and it's on in their Google Classroom, and I'm walking around and the student has another tab up and they are Googling the answer and transferring it to the Google Classroom survey, right?
Right.
That student is not taking a test, but making the assessments require students to demonstrate their understanding, demonstrate their learning, think about an answer. And it's okay that you used AI or Google to help you learn, but the demonstration of the learning, you're going to have to do that with your brain.
You got to do it with your brain. And,
Yes.
and you have, as a teacher, you got to be thoughtful. It sort of reveals things that we've always known are problematic. Like you said, taking that test and cheating. That same student with the tabs, years ago, she was looking at her neighbor. She had it written down. Like, kids are going to try to cheat no matter what. Ashley?
I don't know if these numbers are the same now, because obviously it's been a few years. But when SRAB had the AI Commission, I was actually on that. And one of our meetings, we had this guest speaker come in, but they were quoting a survey that had been taken before large language AI models came out about students self-confessing to plagiarism, how many have tried it, things like that. And then a similar survey by a similar organization, maybe even the same organization that did it a year after AI had come out, talking about, have you used AI? And whatever the percentages are, let's say it was 50% of students plagiarized. Whatever that number was, almost exactly the same with who's used AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the point was just what you're saying right now, which is that if you're going to plagiarize, you're going to plagiarize. You're going to find a way to do it. It's not necessarily AI.
If you're plagiarizing, it's because you didn't want to learn the information. And you couldn't learn it. You didn't want to learn it. You chose not to learn it. And that choice was made by millions of children before AI, and it will be made. And so as a teacher, how can I make them interested enough to learn it that they'll use AI to help them build an understanding? But then I'm going to have my test security, right? I'm going to lock down those browsers or use my system that lets me see everybody's screen as they're taking the test and all those things. I'll end with this. My son just turned in his AP research essay, which is what they work on all year on one big research project. And the teacher, he said, was going off on kids because as you turn it in, it goes through a college board system and it tells you what percent an AI detector. We know AI detectors are not great, but some of these are 70%, 80%, 70%. And the teacher was livid because you spend all year on this and they are using it. Now, they said that it was because of Grammarly. So Grammarly is something that you can click on it and it fixes your simple grammar mistakes. So Now, I asked him what the box said for you, and he said 0. He said 0%. So I'm just going to brag on young Caleb Brockdown as our final statement of the day. Thank you, Erin, for this wrap up.
No, thank you, Dave.
This is our wrap up episode. We have had a great semester talking to our featured presenters for the conference, and we are excited to have a great and relaxing summer. And this is our last episode for a few weeks, but we will see you back here in the fall, and look out this summer for some great special episodes where we highlight some of the most interesting conversations and stories that some of our guests have had to say.
Thank you for listening to this episode brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. SREB is a nonprofit dedicated to improving education from pre-K all the way to PhD and into the workforce. Visit sreb.org for resources on instructional practices, teacher data, career pathways, and more. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at SREB-School Improvement and on Twitter/X and Instagram, both at SREB Education. See you next week.